All right, I think we'll get started. So this we're gonna do a slightly different format. It's called a fishbowl. For those of you who are familiar with that format, so the idea is that we're going to start with the topic. There are chairs, and then at any point in time, one chair has to be empty, which basically means we want to invite people from the audience. When they have a viewpoint, they can come and take a chair, and then whoever has been on the panel for longest gets kicked out, right? And then, that way we kind of engage everybody and have a, more engaging conversation, right? Especially at 6 p.m., you would want to keep the energy high. So that's what we're going to do. And so obviously chairs are empty. We want you folks to come in. I'll probably request Mehdi to summarize like the what we discussed today at the executive lunch, and then maybe a few other things.
Yeah, so that's philo, right? First in, last out, right? So this is how it works. And again, just to say, at any time, if you think you can add to the topic, or if you have an opinion to say, we have some speakers. You can come on stage. The mic will turn, and it will be flowing, right, until it's full. And when it's full, then I will be the first one to leave, and that it will be revolving, right? It will be fun, and that gives a lot of interaction. So don't hesitate. At the exec lunch at noon, we had a discussion with a lot of execs about like what's going on. And really, to wrap up what we said there have been really two phases, right? The first phase was really like how we go from legacy systems, like monolithic architecture, old ERP systems, whatever, like monolithic, to more agile architecture. And so for the last 15 years, we've done that with many philosophy, right? We had more RESTful APIs, more REST JSON API versus SOAP XML, right? We started to have more lightweight systems, more conventions, like with get, post, put, patch, delete, verbs and methods, right? Better than the SOAP protocol. So that was the first thing. Then we had the microservices era, that came. We had the API as a product mindset. Like every API should be thought as a product to be consumable. So this is the shift from API integration to API consumption. If APIs are well described, if their experience is great, we don't integrate API, we consume APIs. It's a product, right? It's a pleasure, it's a delightment, right? So that's really the idea. So with all these mindset, with all these ideas, we've shifted from legacy architecture to more agile, more available architecture, right? And now we have a lot of streaming capabilities. We have asynchronous APIs that our friends at Solace may talk about. So that was the first shift, and now all tech leaders, architects needs to understand this ecosystem and navigate through this landscape, protocol landscape, mindset landscape. So we thought it was over. So they begin to start GraphQL, asynchronous API, REST. They thought it was okay, right? Finally, they've done the job. No, because now they need all that job that was made for humans, for developers, now needs also to be made for AI agents, right? This is what we call agent experience. Not the developer experience, but the agent experience. How do I publish my API? How do I write my specifications? How do I document them to be agent ready? To be LLM ready, because LLMs and agents read all the docs, right? They read all the docs contrary to humans, so you have to be sure it's up to date, it's specified and machine readable, right? So, and all of this, and I will give it to my neighbor. We finished by talking about the shift from API gateways to AI gateways, from API teams to AI teams, and the big question that may not have been solved today, maybe tomorrow we'll see, is like, when a company do AI for fun, most of the time they don't go through APIs. They go through frameworks like LangChain and other stuff, like with developers and stuff. When it's AI for run, production, the CIO say, no. Okay, I won't talk to the API guys. They have been doing API management, authentication, authorization for the last 10 years. They're legit. I trust them more than you doing RAG with whatever data you found on the system, right? I see some people laughing about that. So now the big question is like AI for fun, AI for run. Where is the role of the API management there? So this is mostly what we said, and I'm glad to share the mic.
Thanks a lot. So Precisely tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the same topic on modernizing the APIs. So, when we talk about the modernizing the APIs, how we evolve in terms of integration, right? So, as he rightly said, we started with point-to-point integration. Now we are moving towards, APIs are heavily used. I believe 85 to 90% of enterprises are using APIs now. But now what's next, right? So, it's all about the real time, right? So, on the real time perspective, so we talk about the events and how can we make events available as a API products. That's exactly what we call about evented APIs or async APIs, right? So that's where we are heading towards. Still, I know async APIs are still pretty new. We have some specifications as part of async API standards, which people are already using it, but it's still pretty new with the enterprises. And now we are also getting into the era of AI, right? Especially on the agentic AI. So, as you guys know, I'm from Solace, and we're also investing on how can we accommodate the event-driven architecture towards to the agentic AI world. So we are building a concept called agentic mesh, where it'll help to move or deliver the events towards the agentic AI in terms of to deliver the intent, right? So when we talk about the agents, it's all about the intent. So it's not about the tasks. So you need to ensure your intent is fulfilled by using the AI, which is precisely delivered by the agentic AI. That's the current perspective, and we are heading towards that, and all the solutions would evolve around that. That's my view. Yeah.
Actually, I want to address one point that Mehdi just made, which is when AI comes into picture and you already have APIs and your CIO comes and says, hey, the API guys have been doing this for a long time and they really understand what they're doing. So, can you leverage API? This is a problem that we are facing in our organization as well. I wouldn't call it a problem, sorry, wrong word. But basically, we are also, rapidly adopting AI and building agentic workflows, agentic orchestration. And we follow domain-driven design, and each domain gets its own AWS account. So it's a multi-account strategy as well. Now, when I have a business process and I have an agentic service or an orchestration that is happening, it will have to go and gather data from multiple domains. So one of the things, one of our principles is none of these agentic workloads will access data across the domain boundary directly. Because the thing about domains is you have a boundary, that domain owns the data and is responsible for the security of that data, governance of that data, all that. So one of the ways we've been thinking about it is that this agentic service will, invoke maybe MCP servers that exist in these domain accounts or APIs. And, we define our recipe in such a way that, there are sufficient guardrails and stuff like that. And APIs, because it's your entry point, it has authentication, authorization, data access, all that sorted, can we use that? We also understand that, using APIs, the traditional APIs for agentic flows is not going to be very effective or efficient. So now we've got to also rethink how we are going to make these APIs that works for agentic, or is API really the right mechanism? But one thing that we are very sure is where we have business orchestration happening and we have an agentic workload there, that is never going to cross the domain boundary and access data directly. So that's one of the principles.
That's a very interesting topic, right? So in fact, I think maybe I've had this conversation with 4 separate people today about how much data access do you provide to an agent, right? So few people were of the opinion that they want to limit and be only sure what they want to expose to the agents so that it's like heavily controlled and approved and only then accessible. And my personal viewpoint, and at least my experience, is when you expose things and you see it do something, it's quite interesting of like, you think about a workflow and you say, okay, this information and this is what this will need. And then if you don't put any boundaries, any guardrails, and just let it go crazy, it comes up with a completely new workflow that you had never imagined, right? So where do you draw the boundary, right? How much do you want to expose versus how much do you want to control? I guess like that's, in your case, you're saying domain boundaries is going to be the guideline, the rule of thumb in this case in terms of what. But I'm just curious to see.
So I think there are different kinds of use cases. The one that I described is for our business use cases, which our customers, our users are going to use. And their domain boundaries are absolutely essential. Information, disclosure threats, elevation of privilege, we are very cautious about those threats. And we store a lot of PII data, so it's very important. But to the point that you are talking about, we do have a lot of operational use cases, which are, our own folks, and they serve customers. And the way they operate is they don't necessarily go to these domains, they go to our data lake. So, we also have use cases where certain roles have access to a larger amount of data. And in such case, what you're describing might actually work, but it's still our people, and, we can still have guardrails, our laptops, make sure, there's no data egress, like all that controls we can still sort of enforce. So, yeah, I think there are different kinds of use cases, and based on persona, we can.
But I think there's generally a lot of concern around this area, and I'm just curious to see what is your viewpoint.
Well, so especially when we are trying to invest on the AI point of view, right? The most important aspect is the data context, right? So nowadays, the biggest challenge for any enterprise, especially to leverage this opportunity, is how organized the data is, right? They are, right now, every enterprise is working on it, how to organize the data and how to sectionize them, right? So they cannot just, create data dump and leave it to the models to analyze and, provide what are the solutions they're looking for. Because there is a lot of hallucination issues over there, because providing the data and the task which you're trying to, or intent what you're trying to provide for the agents, it'll go and it'll just create some hallucination. It'll come up with, as you said, a whole lot of different solution. Instead, you just try to understand your requirement and accordingly sectionize and provide the data context so that you understand your limitations, and then accordingly you provide the solutioning on top of these, whether it's a RAG or and putting onto the LLMs and providing the agentic on top of it. Yeah.
So just a quick question, like who is currently implementing agent experience or AI systems in their organizations? Yeah? Would you like to come? Yeah, please, come on. Yeah, come on. Yeah. I'll answer the question, but yeah, just you kickstart. And we can applaud him for being courageous, right? Just to answer on what you said, I would say Sam Newman, our keynote this morning, 5 years ago, he told me a sentence that really changed my mind about API design, right? He told me an API is as much as exposing, as much as hiding capabilities, right? I say, oh, that was mind-blowing, right? Because for me it was, of course, you decide what you expose, but when you decide what you expose, actually you decide more what you hide, right? Because you could expose everything. It seems obvious, but it's this kind of thing when you hear it 10 years ago, you think you understand it, and 10 years later say, oh, I understood it, right? I understand. So that's the first thing. With agent, especially, you want to be sure what do you want to hide, right? The second thing is also about workflows. Agents, let's say hallucination is a feature, not a bug, right? Yeah. So there is this kind of potential, I would say not mistake, but deviation from the original workflow. The more you orchestrate, deviation can go to deviation, and so it can scale. So the more advanced the workflow, you will need also to be sure there is grounding elements, right? You need verification about the source or the data validation or whatever. So that's also one important aspect. Even if agents, you want to be sure you expose what you want, the more complex the workflow will be, the more the intent can completely go away. So be sure at every step you have checks and controls and balances. And the last point about these checks and controls, a lot of people call them guardrails, AI guardrails. But it was a quote from Gregor Hopper, who say, you don't drive with guardrails, you don't drive like boom, boom, boom. Maybe some people, but at least not the majority. You drive with lane assist, right? So when you go out of the lane up, the cars make you lane assist. So how can you make your AI agent lane assist with ground and control instead of letting them hit the guardrails and just go like that? So only with this we will be able to achieve AI agent robustness, to be sure that their intent is respected along the way to the original intent and doesn't go somewhere else, right? So that's, for me, the three important aspects. And thank you very much for being there to share your story.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sunil. If we talk about the agentic AI, right, I would like to start with definition of agentic AI. What we generally used to talk about doing a task, right? Now, it might be a manual task, somebody, a human doing it. If you're trying to do that in an autonomous way, then you want to automate that, the second degree of automation, right, without the human. And now, with agentic AI, it's all about achieving a goal by doing a set of tasks so that you have an outcome that can be with a degree of automation that's very easy to understand, and you also have a complete productivity of the human workforce. So what we are trying to do is, we are just starting with the agentic AI transformation, trying to understand what are the use cases that fit for the API to AI transformation, right? In the past, I think in the afternoon I was talking to you, I was telling about the business process, the workflows that are already there, traditionally for 30 years and so, right? We used to have the microservices, we used to have a lot of integration touch points between information systems from A to B and all, right? Now with the agentic AI, it's all about getting the data from each of these information systems in a relatable manner with a semantic analysis that is always there with the AI models, etc. But in a form of a tools, right? You are able to get those in the form of tools that are doing a specific task, that are chained to do a goal. That's the result of that agent. But what we have understood when we are stumbled upon this, converting a traditional workflow into an intelligent workflow by adopting agentic AI. The microservice architecture is still relevant, but it is all about doing the agent as a modular now. An agent that is only doing a specific group of tasks, not to make it too big enough that, okay, I will have one agent that will do everything. It's all about still the modularity, following the microservice principles, making it too logical, driven, etc. And then what we have started to understand also is about the agent is only able to do a certain task, and we have to optimize that. We have to make it more performant in terms of the production scale. But right now, when someone today was talking about the adoption of agentic AI itself is 1%. I think the Gartner person has mentioned it. So we are still in the starting phases. I think everybody here also understands that agentic AI itself is still in the early phase of adoption. So I would also like to understand from others, like maybe if you have done something about the agentic AI and how you have transformed your APIs to work with the agentic AI frameworks.
Actually, that's an interesting segue maybe into the next question. And again, there's a lot of debate on this, is that, a lot of people feel that we don't even have the maturity on the APIs today. And we are already talking about agentic and autonomous and, completely self-driven things. So, but there's also another camp of people who feel like, garbage in is not garbage out in the AI land. It'll make sense and it'll produce really good results. So even if you don't have really good APIs, it's okay. The agentic AI or the other kinds of AIs will figure things out, right? So quickly, maybe, and we'll pick up the pace a little bit. So we do like 30 seconds max, right? Your viewpoint on which camp do you fall into, right? The first or the second?
See, I always advocate for API developer is still relevant. And the workforce that worked on API strategy is still relevant in the AI era. and they are the foundational workforce for building your AI strategy too.
So you fall into the first camp. You believe like you need to get this right, then you would be able to leverage more. Ready?
The more predictability you will want, the more you will want specifications, you will want to be sure everything is specified and controlled. The more, let's say, I would say not innovation, but the more creativity you may want, you may accept, you may go on the other way. Just really 10 seconds. But I've seen a demo of a company doing classic APIs discovery, but they were doing a RAG also. And if you were asking an API call, you were making an API call. If the API was existing, it was an API, go through the API management call. If it was not existing, they were generated on the fly from the RAG. Sometimes the data was really good. Sometimes the data was filled with fake data, but at least you get an answer. It was never failing, but a lot of mistakes inside, but at least they were able to generate stuff, right? So interesting to see. But for me, it's predictability, specify everything. When you allow creativity, it's okay to do the other side.
Okay, so on the API point of view, I think industry already invested a lot. People or community knows about in and out of APIs. So now what's next, right? So what we need to understand is we are getting into the agentic AI or AI world. So how APIs can be more mature to incorporate along with the agentic AI. So our specifications or policies to interact between the agents and the APIs. So what should be our policies and what kind of specifications we need to bring in? I think we need to invest time on that instead of, I know APIs, it'll never go off, it'll be there. I see another 20 years, APIs will be there, maybe more than that, right? But what is needed is how to go along with the ecosystem, what we are seeing currently. That's my view, yeah.
No, I mean, I want to echo what Mehdi said. I think specifications are going to be very important, whether it is your API specifications or, agent recipes and that sort of thing. If we are going purely the agentic route, it's very important to have processes which act as judge, not just one judge, multiple judges, different models, which are underlying each of those judge processes. And also, very good, observability, very good auditability, things like that. So if things do go wrong, are we able to find that very quickly? How can we rectify that? And what is at stake, when we go down that route? I think we are getting there. We do have some very good successes, but we still don't have 100% confidence to go completely agentic at the moment. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, earlier in my talk, I mentioned this, that we studied 200 MCP servers out there, and we found 196 of them don't comply what they say. So, but there is a big rush for everyone to have their MCP out there. So there's this, again, the dilemma of it's okay, it's not perfect, put it out there and we'll figure it out, or get it perfect before we figure it out, and there's always the pros and cons of that. Does anyone want to disagree with what these guys said, have a different viewpoint on this, even just for fun?
I'll go there because it's easier to fill a gap than go on the side, so fill the gap.
Anyone? Keep it moving. Kick some of these guys out. They're boring us.
We still have some room, so.
Thank you. So, I'll take a slightly contrarian view to the way everyone is jumping into AI, and this is a conversation that we had with one of our customers. So they were in a rush to go out with an agent, but there was a whole backlog of stuff like fixing just indexes on the databases, API definitions, and a lot. So a whole ton of technical debt. So my argument was that AI or an agent is an interface into your core system. we are reducing budgets, we are reducing focus on our core systems, which is the building block for AI. So your agent is essentially a tooling or an aggregation of tooling. So if the building blocks are not perfect, if they are defective, you're just going to bubble up defects faster. That's about it. So yes, it is. It is a business requirement that everybody is out there with AI. But unless the focus is on core engineering, on getting the building blocks right, on having the right people doing the right job, it is never going to work. And that is why after about, 2.5 years of GPT-3 release, it's still a buzzword. Most enterprises are still struggling badly with AI because there is very little focus on engineering.
I'll take a slightly contrary view on what you just mentioned, right? So I've been in the business of helping enterprises improve their technical agility, if you will, right? Like pay off technical debt and stuff like that. And I think good 2 decades, and probably there have been a lot more senior people who've done this for much longer. But I don't see the industry, state of the industry, improving much, right? And a very good friend of mine, Brian Foote, once wrote this paper called Big Ball of Mud. And he says, we've known about these brilliant architectures for many years, right? But what you see surviving out there in the world is big balls of mud, right? Slums everywhere, right? So if architecture has been much longer than software, we've not solved that there, then what's the hope that we're going to solve this in this thing? And we've tried for 20 years. I mean, how many people write unit tests? They think today they'll throw an LLM and it'll generate some unit tests for it, and great, like we'll, tick this box off, this technical debt is paid off, right? So I feel like you can keep waiting for the systems to be ready to consume, like the building blocks have to be in place. But I just feel like as a business, I'm running out of patience. I just need to move. I can't wait for your tech debt to be paid, right? Like, so that's my contrarian view to this, that I think, businesses are tired waiting for tech people to fix their shit.
Anyone else on this?
No, I agree. Just about the legacy aspect and, software that works versus software that's beautiful, right? Most of the time, I'm hired to help, let's say, chief architects or API program managers or sometimes CIOs to get budget, right? Say, okay, API management is something, we want to buy new solutions, we want to buy tooling, we want to be ready for AI. But business doesn't want to give us budget, they just believe it has to be minimum cost, right? So tell us, like that we will align with business. So this is what I believe, so that's mostly what I do. But most of the time they say, oh, the CIO took like this big ERP like 20 years ago, this big enterprise service bus that we don't get rid of and everything. And so at the time I tell them, yes, it was good decision at the time, right? If you go back in time, it was probably a good decision that all the industry made, right? And you know what? This decision still works today. Look about all the new technologies that we've put that completely left or whatever. So thank these guys to pay the bills, right? Because these systems are the one who pay the bills. The technical debt is paying the bills, right? So I go there to say, look, thank you for the past architecture. It's not relevant today. We may need to change, right? But it's the legacy it pays the bill and serve customers, right? Software that doesn't serve customers dies. I was having a startup. We were top fresh new technology, no customers. Of course, we had the time. We had the time. We didn't have business needs, so we have the time to have the best architecture possible. Microservice everywhere and everything, like serverless, right? Anything you name, right? But no customers. When you have customers, then you have this discussion with business and technology where it has to be good enough to serve the business, right? And so this is the right tension. It is the role of a CIO to understand, the good tension, and architects to know the good tension between revolving the debt, right, and serving the business, right? So that's maybe a point that I wanted to add. But yeah, technical debt is good. It means you have a running business, right? So let's remind that.
Pat yourself if you have legacy. You've survived. Right?
Yeah, that means you're survived.
If you didn't survive, you wouldn't have the legacy problem. In fact, it's funny because the tech debt metaphor, right? Ward Cunningham came up with the tech debt metaphor, and when he came up with the metaphor, it was to explain to the business people that, we're taking some shortcuts, and it's perfectly okay to take short-term, low-interest debt because that's good business, but don't take long-term, high-interest debt, right? Like, so that was kind of how he was explaining that, it's okay to take these shortcuts, we'll move fast, but don't ask us to take long-term, high interests, right? Like, that's where the metaphor comes from. But I think these days, tech debt is just considered a bad word, right? Like, you have tech debt, oh my God, you must suck at your job, right? But it's actually supposed to mean like, it's a healthy balance. So yeah, pat yourself if you have legacy, you've survived. Cool, we changed some topics. You want to pitch in the next, if you have, like.
I want to take a slightly socio-technical topic, if I may.
Sure.
So what I was speaking about today was my organization is currently modernizing a legacy application into domain-driven design, event-driven architecture, serverless first, multi-account strategy, all that. So we are an organization with about 40 plus remote-first teams who are used to a certain way of working. And this is like a Java monolith, and then somewhere in between we moved into microservices, TypeScript and stuff like that. But when we talk about multi-account, domain-driven, event-driven and that sort of thing, it's a completely different way of thinking and working. And how we bring about this transformation in the organization, what we tried, how we failed, and like what we are doing right now to sort of enable that modernization was what my talk was about. So what I was talking about was essentially building communities of practice within the organization of interested engineers. I was taking the use case of event-driven architecture and how everybody had pain points, but trying to solve that in silos or through a top-down approach, didn't work for us at all. And so how do we build a community of people who hold the roadmap of EDA adoption and implementation across the organization? That was my talk. So maybe like we can, if we want to, we can extend that same thing for AI, because it's new, it's fast, it's fast-paced, it's changing every day. How do we enable engineers to understand even or use it effectively, like even to our day-to-day work? Maybe that's a good question to ask. Who wants to take that?
Okay, that's my favorite topic.
It's a lucky day.
Yeah. So it's been 7 years. I'm evangelizing the EDA. Being part of Solace, that's my preliminary task, right? So how to enable people, enterprises to think event-driven. Let me tell you, even today, sometimes I fail to convey that because people still stuck with monolith, or maybe they understand very well at a
Chair empty. Thank you.
Right, so people still believe on standard ESBs and IPAs, but getting into event-driven architecture is still a challenge for many people. But as you rightly mentioned, right, modernizing meaning making things move in real time. So which means it's all about events. And if it is events, then we should think about event-driven architecture, right? So I don't have anything to conclude here, but I just want to understand from the audience, do you guys still believe EDA is important in this era? Maybe raise hands if people believe EDA is required. See, that's a challenge, right? I face, because we go to every enterprise, we try to enable them an EDA, event-driven architecture, to head towards the digital transformation. If you people believe that digital transformation is needed based on the demand, business demand, especially when we talk about the go-to-market, right? So how quickly you can enable your products and how quickly you can deploy your products in real time, and accordingly, your dashboards and everything should be responsive, right? So for that, the best way to handle is, making your data driven in a event manner. And for that, you should have a ecosystem or a platforms to to move that event from one side to the other side, meaning from the source to the downstream applications. Right, so probably I'll ask anyone to comment on this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll give you a chance. So I think we are talking about the importance of the event-driven architecture, right? So
They kind of shifted because I think Shilpa's question was like if you want to, AI is still new, and if you want, AI is new, and if you want to evangelize and get people to champion it, like how do you rally people to invest and learn, and what's the right way? I think you kind of slightly shifted the topic to, EDA and its importance, but maybe I guess the broader thing is any topic, right? Let it be EDA or let it be AI, where it's still not fully adopted within the organization. The awareness maybe is not as good, and things are changing rapidly. What could you do to help, your team members, kind of come up to speed and kind of, feel confident to take it forward, right?
yeah, I think
Any tips or techniques that have worked in your context?
Yeah, I mean, throughout my IT experience, right, I have been an integration practitioner, right? I have started with message brokers, etc. We talked about ESBs. I think Madhi was talking about ESBs, microservices, APIs. Now we have the EDA, event-driven architecture, and now we are talking about AI. And even in this day of the fast-paced that we have, like short span, we call it, right? When we do a TikTok reels and all. Even if you look at the YouTube now, whenever we see a video, we always have a shopping cart now added to it, right? But that's, in my opinion, it's kind of driven by the event-driven, right? Because for every transaction that you're doing on the platform, it is trying to relate to something else. So it's an event that is generated, and the system picked it, and is able to do a preference for you, right? And to answer, I think, the question of practice, how do we create a community of practitioners, right? I think for that, we need to be the lead the change, right? We have to create an awareness in terms of what is the importance of the topic, and create a culture of change in terms of giving the best possible use cases and motivate the team, enable the team to skill on a particular topic, right? I think this API Days is one of the conference that enables us to come together as a practitioners.
Bring your entire team to API Days.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the neighboring companies and the competitors as well.
Yeah, and we have to do that because we have been doing it maybe at the team level or the organization level, right? But I mean, this is where we maybe as a community of practitioners have to bring like-minded people into a room like this in terms of sharing our ideas, sharing our best practices, and also looking forward in terms of what next, right? What is the future of it, right? We are talking about the future of APIs now in the AI era. Similarly, we need to start looking at a community of practitioners for ADI. I strongly agree for it.
Okay, cool. Pass it.
So hi everyone, I'm Bhavna. I'm an engineer and I work for a company called StockX. So I think Shilpa's question is more about how organizations what are different organizations doing to enable engineers with AI tools, etc. So I can give my example. So like most organizations, we also have the top level decisions are made to push more AI-driven thinking, etc. On a day-to-day basis, I have most of my days, like 50-60% of my day is writing code. So, or, writing API docs, or let's say writing RFCs, or design for different use cases. So I'd like to touch upon 2 or 3 points. First thing is that MCPs. So we have a lot of support channels as a part of our ecosystem, and CS agents or customer service agents say, oh, what happened to this payment? What happened to this order? And then a developer has to be on call, or kind of sitting there to check what's happening with this. So we are trying to automate that part where there's some prompt which can be ingested and then integrated with different APIs and kind of enable them to get this data automatically. So this is one thing. And I think second is, Naresh also touched upon, is unit tests. So on a day-to-day basis, when you're pushing new code, if your test case coverage is below a certain point, we usually don't accept that particular merge request or pull request. So because we have AI tooling available and our organization is investing into AI tooling, it is easier for us to generate these unit tests. But at the same time, I think I kind of put a halt on this because what happened is we started getting 40, 50, 60, 100 unit tests for the length of the spec file, or let's say a test file, is like 4 times, 5 times, sometimes 10 times of what code you're writing. And sometimes it does not make sense to have those test cases, right? So those kind of guardrails also, let's not call it guardrails, maybe lane indicators, also needs to be in place. So this is another thing. And I think in a day-to-day basis, there are a lot of sequence diagrams or something which I have to generate, and sometimes I'm just lazy to draw it from end to end. So I just give a step-by-step, input to, let's say, Gemini or ChatGPT, and then it generates a Mermaid.js for me. And then I can just import it into any renderer and it's just add it to my documents. So I think these are 2-3 things which I am doing. And I've also tried multiple things, but yeah, I think this I wanted to add.
If we look at adoption and how we can, say, evangelize adoption or accelerate the adoption, I can relate to my experiences from a consulting partner for companies. And so there are 2 levels. So one is the engineering community, one is the business community. So with the business community, it's not so much about the prompts, or it's more about the outcome that they can achieve. And a lot of times it is about cannibalizing your own consulting business in certain ways to make that happen. But we've done that. We've done demos and where we've said that you can take out support engineers, specifically doing a lot of manual work. And that's how, say, CTOs and CIOs eventually end up making decisions that, yes, this technology actually works for us, and it's not a promising thing that can be 5 years down the line, but it works today. For the engineering community, it has been more about, the first step was starting to pair with them, because first we just tried enabling AI tools like Copilot for everybody in the team, and then when we were pulling adoption reports or usage reports, it was really bad. And if we sit down and pair with one of the not so mature engineers, what we realized is that they're using it, they just don't know what and how to use it. They cannot use Copilot for as a pair programming partner. Rather, they're just using it as an extension of a search engine. So that we managed to change through a lot of pairing and say things like irrelevant tests or even a lot of times documentation that you don't need inside a code base. a lot of that was addressed through, say, custom instructions within VS Code. And I think right now, even in GitHub, you can do custom instructions where you don't have to do it for everybody. It's propagated to the entire team. So these are some of the things that has worked for us.
Cool. I think, thank you. We're a little out of time, so appreciate all of you being on the panel. So big round of applause for them. Thanks again.